My job here is to convince you that social skills are a thing that you can actually learn. It doesn't just osmosis its way into you as you're growing up. Everyone treats it like it is, though, and that's where a lot of people start feeling behind in social skills. Oh, I'm socially awkward. Oh, I don't play well with others. I don't, get along with other people. But a lot of that all ties back into actually learning social skills when you are much younger. The majority of people tend to learn it in varying degrees of success, I might add, in a very organic, almost subconscious type of way. You're not necessarily thinking about, oh, I'm going to learn this social skill and I'm going to practice it this way in my first grade class along with my ABCs. Most people don't think about it that way. I was also somebody that did not think that way, and I fell behind in my social skills a long time ago. That made things very hard for me later on in life, even though I wish the alternative was something much different. So, what I want to tell you about is how I actually, throughout my entire life, monitored my social actions and compensated for the lack of that social stuntedness when I was younger. And I learned things through algorithms, through if-and statements, almost like coding, but for social skills. And the first thing that you want to just be aware of is that, yes, like one, you can learn this thing once it is in your conscious mind. There's the 4 levels of difficulty. There's the unconscious incompetence. There is the conscious incompetence. There's the conscious competence and conscious or unconscious competence. That's like muscle memory. That's like walking. You don't have to think about walking to do it. And so now I would say that I'm towards the higher end of conscious competence, bordering on unconscious competence in certain areas. And here is exactly how I got there. So the first thing I noticed is that there were classmates around me that really understood this stuff. They really understood what it meant to activate certain social skills and basically do what they needed to do to be popular. I had no idea. So how do you bridge that gap? Not knowing what's going on to, being the popular kid, knowing how to interact with people. So you have to first be aware that there's a deficit within you, and the deficit is going to have symptoms. So you're going to know you're lacking certain social skills if essentially you have a majority of interactions where you don't even feel comfortable in your own skin. You're not sure what to say. And probably about half to 75% of the time, you can see that reflected in the other person's expression. They might look a little uncomfortable or taken aback or just kind of confused when they're talking to you because you just don't know what's going on. And if you are in that sort of situation, or if you can't take care of your wants and needs because of this lack of social skills, now you know you're in the deficit. Okay, so how do you get out of the deficit? The deficit starts by observing those who are successful. So there was somebody in my class that was just a naturally athletic, charming, funny person. One of the popular kids, as we would say, in first grade. And so I would look at this guy and I'd be like, okay, what is he doing exactly that I'm not? And when I had that thought, it triggered in me this desire to break down his actions and the responses to those actions. Because social skills are a million actions going on at once. It's not just what's being said. It is body language. It is micro expressions. Sometimes it's literally just the amount of distance between you and the person. Because if I got up like really close to the camera, now, that's not very fun to be that close to somebody's face, unless you're in a different contextual relationship with them. But if I'm too far, now it's kind of like, okay, why are you talking to me from such a strange and weird distance? And so there is a sweet spot for most of these things. So I would look at him and he would say a joke, for example, and people would laugh. And what I started doing is I started making a mental checklist of actions that he would do and expected reactions from those around him as a very kind of primitive way of dipping my toes in the water. Not necessarily dipping my toes in the water, but building a information bank for referencing later. And so when you build this reference bank of actions and reactions that you want, you can backwards engineer things now simply by trying it. So yes, you could condense this all into mimicking, but it's important that you make these distinctions so you know which stage you're in and which stage to go to next. So one, understand when you're in a deficit of social skills. Number two, find people that you can model and mimic. Sorry, I don't want to put that third finger there. Find people that you can model and mimic, and then you have to calibrate and change your actions based on what the reactions are. So what I would do when I was a kid is I'd take a joke he said, and then I'd bring it up like a week later. Maybe somebody would laugh, maybe somebody wouldn't, but I'd file that away. Okay, it doesn't work 100% of the time, and it seems, maybe in some contexts, this would be funny, in other contexts it wouldn't. So you can do that for like greetings, for jokes, for moments of hospitality, for invitational etiquette. And now when you're actually testing these things, you're trying these new behaviors, it's going to feel uncomfortable. It is naturally going to feel uncomfortable because you're doing things that you haven't really done before, but you've seen other people do and that have been successful. So what's going to determine what is and isn't successful is if you understand the underlying principle of what's being said. So, for example, when I was in, let's say, 5th grade and saw my friend ask to be invited to this party that a kid was having at his house, I saw the almost physical recoil from the people around. And it was hard to watch because I considered him one of my, only good friends at the time. And I still do. But his body language was kind of very shriveled up, very unsure. It was the body language of somebody that was on the outside looking in. So I filed that away in my head. Okay, don't invite yourself to stuff overtly. That is punished. What you're also going to want to do is when you find something that works, you want to make sure it's consistent. You want to see if it's repeatable majority of the time. It's not going to get the exact reaction all of the time, but majority of the time it should. So for example, if you say hi to somebody, 90% of the time people are going to say some form of greeting or hello back to you. But if you do not do that, then people are going to ignore you, right? So when you say hi and that 10% just ignores you or doesn't give you the expected response, that's still okay if you have a 90%-ish consistency rate. So subtlety and observation is rewarded. Overt asking and direct lines of questioning can be punished and are more punished more often than the subtle observer that quietly implements this. that's one of the things I learned from my friend during that instance. Okay, so now you're at the point where you're trying new behaviors and you are incorporating new information and behaviors into your stack, so to speak. Now is the time for you to take a quick adjustment of where you are, because this is a process that could take 6 months to 10 years plus, depending on how much of a deficit you have, what, maybe health or mental conditions you're dealing with, how quick of a learner you are. It's going to vary for everyone, but this is a lifelong process ultimately. I would say a good measuring stick, a good minimum requirements, like, okay, you've met the threshold of social competency, is when you are able to designate your needs and wants, and you are able to communicate that to other people and have success the majority of the time. And what I mean by this is not asking somebody for a Lamborghini and them giving you the keys, though if you can do that, you have far surpassed me in social skills. What this means is more, my flight got changed. Am I able to navigate the system, find who I need, get help from somebody, and get a different flight, get a reimbursement? Am I able to create and sustain social circles and individual friendships within those social circles? Am I able to attract and have romantic relationships with other people? And those are generally the things that fall into the category of essentially needs and wants, depending on the person, lifestyle, what exactly you're going after. But for most people watching this, I'm guessing it's going to be people who have had a little bit of a social skill deficit build up throughout the years, and now they're really ready to dial in and get this thing under control, and not just cope and survive in the world of socializing, but also thrive. Also do the really cool things that you can do with advanced social skills later on. And that can include stuff like entry to high-level social circles. That can include stuff like actually starting your own group, either for business or pleasure, and doing leadership stuff through that. Or it can be just networking with people who could actually, further your career, get you free concert tickets and, comped meals and events. That's all advanced stuff that we can get into much later. But that's the advanced end. We're just getting to the starting line. Because most people, I would say, I'd probably say maybe 20% of people are really bad at social skills, and 20% of people are amazing at social skills. But the majority, I would say, is that 60% in the middle. Usually people have enough to kind of get by on life, but they're missing certain spots and collections of social skills that for some reason or another they just didn't pick up growing up. And so now that you are actually implementing these behaviors, keeping what works, getting rid of what doesn't, still doing a little experimentation and always learning, now as long as you can take care of your needs and wants with your social skills, you're good. You're probably in the 60% now. That's what I would probably call the starting line, right? Is when you get into that 60% where you can more or less, navigate all types of relationships in your life to varying degrees of success. Now you're at the starting line, and from there you can go on and hone these skills in whichever direction you want and get crazy with it from there. But that is essentially how you intellectually compensate for not organically building these social skills while you were growing up. And you know, I had a really hard time, you know, in grade school. There were, you know, many times where it just seemed like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. But for those who do possess, you know, the ability to think critically and the courage to try new things in the hope of just bettering your life, I absolutely think that, you know, and it's my belief with the proof I have in my own life that you absolutely can learn social skills, and it's important to learn them as like a priority, at least until you get to that 60% where you can more or less take care of yourself and have successful relationships in your life. A couple side notes on this is I want to say that learning social skills is a frustrating thing because you are essentially in a random environment, aka the world. And there's going to be these chaotic little sub-environments, you know, school, work, home, that things are going to change a lot. And the only constant is you and your actions. And so it's going to take a lot of repetitions to really understand the underlying principles of each social skill. And it's not going to be a consistent, like, oh, I did this time, and then it's going to be better next time, up and to the right, always better than the next time. It's usually going to be kind of like up and down like this. Sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not. And it's going to fall on you to find out why. I can help shortcut some of that, and that's what I hope to do on this channel. But do not expect it just to be a linear progression path. If you zoom out far enough with enough time, yeah, it should look pretty good. But it's definitely going to vary from person to person. If you have any stories, need any context or details, let me know. Go out there and build some social skills. Thanks for watching.